Hey guys, it's Karl. So I've been planning to make this video for a while, but it's perfect timing as the new M2 products are into the studio. So we have the M2 Mac Mini, the M2 Pro, MacBook Pro, and this is my older powerhouse that runs pretty much the channel when I'm here locally. So this is the Mac Studio with the M1 Max chip, and the problem across most Apple products, I always say, most computers in general, are the just general lack of storage. And if we look at the base models, what Apple offers, say on their site. So the Mac Mini, I know that this starts at 256 gigs of storage. We can fill this up in probably 2 days of shooting. Each video we shoot is around 100 gigs. Obviously, Apple charges ridiculous amounts of money to upgrade to 512 to a terabyte. This MacBook Pro, as an example, has a 2 terabyte drive. So expensive. $400 for 2 terabytes, $1,000 for 4 terabytes, or the top spec, $2,200 extra dollars for 8 terabytes of storage. You can probably buy multiple devices for that. And typically when I say grab a new device, if you guys are watching these vids, I say it all the time, I always recommend getting the lowest storage option. To grab the lowest storage size option, get the lowest base storage option. And honestly, I think the base model, grab the base level storage, get a portable SSD or some sort of hard drive, because don't pay the Apple tax. My general solution before was to just grab these small little SSDs, work off of those, but I've been looking to expand that solution just because these aren't as reliable, because I actually work with, say, Nick. He's on the B-roll cam right now. So typically when I travel, and last year I broke my record for the amount of trips that I went on, sometimes Nick isn't there with me, isn't shooting or editing with me on site, and sometimes I have people helping me back home here, and I cannot send a hard drive of this size from, say, Malaysia, from Qatar, wherever I am on the face of the earth, back home to Toronto. So I wanted a solution that we could work off of the same working files and obviously access that footage on the line. That intros us to the NAS that I'm using right now, and it's the current storage setup right now on the channel. So this is the Synology DS1522 Plus, and big thanks to Synology for sponsoring this episode. And I've been looking to build a NAS storage solution for, I think, years now. I've just never got around to it. And you can actually see the size of this device. It's actually very similar, maybe slightly larger than the Mac Studio. And this thing now powers all of my storage, and it's been super, super handy. I'll kind of geek out a bit around the tech around this. If you're not familiar with what a NAS is, it's essentially a network attached storage unit. And you can see each of the individual bays here have separate hard drives where I can store my stuff. And obviously, since this has 5 separate bays, they're all individually customizable, and you can kind of swap out the hard drives for your specific needs. And before we get into that, I'll quickly explain the different types of RAID setups. So in RAID 0, all drives are grouped together. So I've got the 3 different bays here. Each of them is 12 terabytes. That gives you 36 terabytes of total storage. And that data is stored equally across. The downside is if one fails, they all fail. It's fast, but technically not that safe. So with RAID 1, the drives are grouped in pairs. And because I have an odd number here, I'll explain a bit more in a second. If I had 2 12 terabyte drives, they would each be split. So that data would be mirrored. If one fails, you can back it up with the other. RAIDs 2, 3, and 4 typically aren't really used, so we'll skip over those. And with RAID 5, which is the most common setup in RAID setup, so I've got the 3 different bays here, each 12 terabytes, but the parity of information is striped across all 3. So what's good is it still supports one hard drive failure. If you technically need something a bit more secure, you can go up to RAID 6, which parity can be striped twice. For all intensive purposes, I am running a RAID 5 setup. So like I mentioned, I do have the 5 different bays. So 3 of those are the 12 terabyte Iron Wolf hard drives. And these are great, not just for storing hard drive, but for backing up files, older projects that we're kind of done with. So for example, at CES, we filled up, I think, around 2 terabytes, maybe even 2.5 terabytes worth of footage. Now that those are all online, you can watch them. They're actually stored on this now. And in the other 2 bays, I'll just slot that back in, we actually just have working SSDs. So these are from Synology. You can see here that they're 480 gigs each. These are great for working files. Like I mentioned, when I'm about to head on my next trip for the next Samsung event, Nick, are you? I think Nick's coming with me on that one, but after that we've got a travel schedule. We've got OnePlus and then an Oppo event. I think I'm doing those solo. If I'm working on any of those files remotely across the world, Nick can access that working file straight through this NAS network. You can access it pretty much anywhere across the world, whether he's on his Mac, I can access files, say even on my phone. We can both work on that file and we can access it together, which is super dope. And I don't have to send a little portable hard drive halfway across the world, which obviously doesn't make any sense. So I know that I've been planning on making this NAS setup for the longest time. This thing from Synology is an absolute beast. It's got its own CPU inside, and it does have those 5 bays, which, as I mentioned, you can kind of arrange them to whatever your needs. I know some of my friends actually just have pure actual hard drives and don't work off of any SSDs. And technically, if you want to back up your footage, you still require something hard, cold storage, and you can save that somewhere off site. But for our purposes, for all of the video stuff, this is great. It technically isn't, completely perfect. So obviously, as this is based off a network, you do need to plug this into an actual Ethernet port. And since we're here in the studio in this condo, it's in the darkest area of the room, which is kind of all the way off that way. So this kind of sits off in its own sad little corner. I wish I had some sort of a network cable running around my main desk setup here, but I will kind of live nicely as the future house build, which is going on. I can kind of implement and plan for that in the future. And when you compare the actual price of this to, say, online or cloud storage, I know that you can get, Google Storage or Dropbox, you can get a couple terabytes. The price of those add up very, very quickly. And with this, you actually own your own storage. You're not shipping it off to some cloud data warehouse and you don't know what's going on with it. You own everything in-house. So super, super dope. Fun little video that I made. Like I said, I wish this could live somewhere here, but it's in its own little corner. Now you know how to upgrade your storage, and never, never buy more storage from any of your Apple devices, any of your devices in general. I find that storage is just so overpriced for whatever reason. We're in 2023. It should be cheaper, but hey, that's the end of this vid, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch the rest of you in one of my next ones. Peace.